My fiancée left me 2 weeks before the wedding and wrote that you don't deserve to marry me. 10 months later, she wanted to come back, but it was too late. 2 weeks before the wedding, I woke up in an empty bed. It wasn't Sunday morning or a rushed early call, just an ordinary weekday. I reached for her, instinctively, then froze. The space she normally occupied was hollow, as though she had never been there. On the nightstand lay my phone, its screen black. I pressed the power button and squinted at the single text message. You don't deserve to marry me. That was it. 3 words. 3 words and a signature. No explanation, no apology, no warning. My heart seized, and in that instant my entire world unraveled. I had woken up expecting to say hello to her warm face, to plan our rehearsal dinner logistics. Instead, a void, an accusation, and the echo of footsteps already gone. I stumbled out of bed, hands shaking, feet dragging. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. I looked at the framed photos on the wall, a snapshot of us at the beach, laughing on that summer afternoon, another of us hiking in the mountains, tired but triumphant. Every image whispered memories, hopes, and promises that felt suddenly meaningless. I held my phone in both hands, curse words forming unspoken in my mind. But anger didn't come. Shock and disbelief were stronger pressures, as though my heart was squeezed and my mind was frozen. How could she drop this on me at the 11th hour? 2 weeks. 14 days before we were supposed to stand in front of our friends and promise forever. I called her apartment. It went straight to voicemail. I called her mobile. Silent. No typing indicators, no read receipts, nothing. I walked outside, still in pajamas, my belt hanging loose. The crisp morning air slapped me as I wheezed down the street. Neighbors saw me bearing confusion and panic. I stopped at a corner coffee shop, my usual spot. I ordered a black coffee. My hands were shaking so much the barista paused and asked if I was okay. I lied that I was fine, paid, and took my drink to a bench. That hot, bitter coffee grounded me, reminded me that I was still alive, still breathing, still capable of feeling. I closed my eyes and let the world slow down. I thought about the days before. 2 nights ago, she zipped up my tux jacket, her eyes full of love, and whispered, "You look amazing." Last week, we argued a tiny, silly argument about flower arrangements. She wanted roses, I wanted lilies. That same night, I told her over dinner, "We'll figure it out together." Now, the lilies would stay in their boxes, the tux jacket would hang unused, and together felt like a cruel joke. I kept my eyes closed until the coffee cooled. Then I got up and walked home numb. Inside, I opened my laptop and wrote, "I don't understand. Please tell me what's wrong." Sent. No reply. Then wrote to her best friend, who had been at our engagement party. "Have you heard from A? Did anything happen?" The email hung in the sent folder like a question mark. The day slid by in a haze. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I tried to work, opened my laptop, stared at the screen, wrote a few sentences, deleted them, and closed it again. Everything I'd worked on felt emptier now, like a stage with the lead actor gone. At some point, I called my father, my voice cracking, and told him what happened. He listened silently for a long time, then said, "Come home tomorrow. You need family around you." I agreed, though part of me wondered what surprises my heart was still capable of absorbing in that old house. Later that evening, I returned to our apartment to collect my things. I couldn't stay where it felt haunted. I packed clothes, toiletries, my phone charger, anything that wouldn't feel too heavy to carry away from her. I left behind the framed photos. Maybe I wasn't ready to box them up. Maybe I thought I might come back. As I carried the last bag to the car, I looked at her name etched on the mailbox, and me. For the first time, I saw it as false advertising. I drove off with no destination, just me. Somewhere between the city lights and the empty road, tears blurred my vision. At my childhood home, Mom greeted me with open arms. My father sat me down in the living room. Mom brought soup, Dad lit a fire in the fireplace. They didn't ask. They just listened while I spoke, fragmented words pouring out. At some point, I stopped talking. My mother's soft humming filled the silence. I closed my eyes and let the warmth of the room seep into my bones. That night, I cried until I had no tears left. My throat ached. My pillow was soaked. But I couldn't sleep. I lay there replaying that text. "You don't deserve to marry me." What did she mean? Was I too flawed, too broken, too something? Anxiety and guilt intertwined, because when you love someone, you can't help wondering if you failed them. 4 days I stayed with my parents. I saw a counselor, like Dad suggested, to sort out the raw pieces inside me. The counselor didn't say much, but wrote notes and nodded, then said, "You've been through a trauma. It's normal to feel unmoored." Just hearing it got me crying again. Trauma. Yes, maybe that was what it was. My phone stayed silent. No calls. No messages. I tried texting once, "Can we talk?" That lasted a full hour before I hit delete. I couldn't bear the silence. With nothing to tether me, I slipped into a loop of doubt and longing. Why had she done this? Why then? I looked for reasons in every moment of our relationship: her hesitation on vacations, her distant phone calls, her sudden mood swings. I felt like a detective whose clues were meaningless fragments. After a week, I forced myself to go back to work. Sitting at my desk, I stared at her empty chair. I imagined that the skeleton of her presence remained, like mist lingering after someone disappears from the room. I asked coworkers to start giving me tasks, anything. Meetings helped by distracting me for an hour at a time. Emails, spreadsheets, phone calls, all mechanical, just things to do so my mind wouldn't spin. Evenings were hardest. I came home to this borrowed apartment, Dad's extra space, with no fire, no warmth, no bed that smelled like her. I cooked simple meals, but they tasted like ash. I tried to read a book, but my eyes slipped over the words. I tried walking in the nearby park, thinking fresh air would clear the haze. Instead, I felt her absence like a weight tied to my chest, making it hard to breathe. In those first 10 days, reality felt unreal. I had been walking toward a life where her name and mine were forever linked. Now I existed in limbo, with that final text carving an ugly scar in my mind. "You don't deserve to marry me." The more I whispered it to myself, the more it echoed inside: a verdict, a condemnation, a puzzle I couldn't solve. But I couldn't stop. My mind circled back: deserve. Did I deserve her? Did I deserve love? Could I ever trust again? Every night, I stared at the ceiling, a million questions spinning in the darkness. And in that spinning, I realized something: this story didn't end here. Maybe I wasn't worthy now, but maybe I could become someone who was. Maybe my life would break and then be rebuilt. Maybe, 10 months from now, I would look back and understand. The journey had just begun. The weeks passed slowly. I kept a journal during that time, not because I thought it would help, but because I needed a place where my thoughts could exist outside my head. Each page was dated, though many entries were just fragments, unfinished sentences, half-formed memories, questions I couldn't answer. One page just said, "I keep hearing her laugh when I close my eyes. I hate that I miss it." I never showed the journal to anyone, not even my therapist. It felt too raw, too exposed. But writing gave me a strange sense of control. If I could put something into words, it meant it hadn't destroyed me. The wedding day came and went. October 15th. I didn't try to ignore it. I woke early that morning and sat alone at the lake near my parents' house. The sun rose slowly, lighting the mist as it hovered just above the water. That morning, I let myself feel everything: anger, grief, confusion, even love. I'd imagined so many times what the day would be like: her walking down the aisle, my vows trembling in my hands, our first kiss as husband and wife. None of that happened. Instead, I sat in silence, letting go of what never was. A week after that, I finally removed the saved date from my phone calendar. I'd like to say things improved quickly after that, but healing never obeys a clock. Some days I felt almost okay. Others, I couldn't get out of bed. Her name still popped into my head like a glitch. I'd walk past someone with similar hair and feel a spike of anxiety. I dreamed about her. Once, I dreamed I was standing at the altar alone, holding a note instead of her hand. Still, life didn't pause just because I was broken. My job slowly picked up again. I moved into a new apartment, not far from my old place, but far enough to breathe without choking on memories. It was small, quiet, and empty of the past. I filled it with new things: a blue couch, a second-hand bookshelf, a cactus I named Elliot. It sounds silly now, but Elliot helped. He never needed much. Just sunlight and the occasional reminder that he was alive. My friends didn't really know what to say. Some avoided the topic altogether. Others tiptoed around it like it might explode if touched. A few tried to help in the best ways they knew. One took me to a concert, another brought over takeout and made me watch bad comedies. I appreciated all of it, even if I didn't always show it. Grief makes gratitude feel muted, like a smile behind glass. But I kept going. That was the important thing. I kept going. Month by month, I began to rebuild myself. I started jogging again. I deleted the shared playlists from my phone, though I saved a copy to a folder I didn't open. I picked up sketching, something I hadn't done since college. I drew street corners, strangers, my cactus. I even sketched a memory of her once. I tore it up the next morning, not out of hate, but because I didn't want to freeze her in time. By the 6th month, I had stopped checking her social media. I'd blocked her on everything, not out of spite but survival. I didn't need updates on her life if she wasn't in mine. My therapist called it a boundary. I just called it silence. Still, silence doesn't always mean peace. One night in March, nearly 10 months after she left, I got a message. It was from a new number I didn't recognize. Just her name showing on the screen. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Hey. I know this might be too late. But I've been thinking about you. About us. Can we talk? The world stopped. I read the message 3 times. Then again. My chest tightened in a way it hadn't for months. Her words weren't elaborate, just cautious. Can we talk? Not I miss you, not I'm sorry, not I made a mistake. Just an opening. A thread. I didn't reply. I didn't know how. I went for a walk instead, letting the cold air slap my thoughts into place. Questions flooded me again. Did she regret it? Why now? What did she want from me? When I came home, I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand. I wrote and deleted 6 replies. One said, no. You made your choice. Another just said, why? A third, do you think I'd been waiting for you? Eventually, I typed. It's been 10 months. I don't know what you're looking for. I hit send. Her reply came an hour later. I'm not sure either. I just know I never stopped thinking about you. I was scared. I thought you deserved someone better, and I panicked. I ran. I've regretted it every day since. Reading it hurt more than I expected. Not because it was cruel, but because part of me had longed to hear something like that. Part of me had spent months trying to believe I was worth the love she withdrew. But the rest of me had moved on. Slowly, painfully, I had stitched together a life without her. I wasn't sure I could open that wound again. I didn't reply for 3 days. I just sat with it. On the 4th night, I wrote. I loved you. I probably still do, in some way. But I'm not the same person anymore. I built something after you left. And I'm not ready to tear it all down just because you're lonely now. No reply came. That was the moment I truly let her go. I didn't feel triumphant. Just quiet. Like a page had finally turned. I turned off my phone, made tea, and sat by the window. Outside, the city moved like always, cars honking, lights blinking, strangers walking by, unaware of the quiet victory happening above them. And for the first time in a long time, I slept without dreaming of her. Spring turned into summer without me really noticing. Days grew longer, the sky stretched wider, and there were moments, brief, quiet moments, where I didn't think about her at all. Those were the ones I clung to. Not because I wanted to forget her, but because I wanted to remember who I was before she left. One Sunday morning in June, I stood in the kitchen making pancakes, an old ritual I'd picked up again. I used to make them for us on slow weekends, when we'd stay in bed too long and pretend the world outside didn't exist. Now, it was just me, a spatula, and a playlist humming quietly in the background. I flipped the second pancake when it hit me. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for her message. Not for her apology. Not for an answer to a question I had finally stopped asking. There was no sudden revelation, no magical closure, just a slow, steady understanding. I had been trying to make sense of a choice that wasn't mine to begin with. And in that process, I had grown into someone new. I started seeing people again, not in the romantic sense, not right away, but reconnecting with the world. I said yes to invitations. I joined a small book club at a co-worker's suggestion. I found myself laughing in conversations that had nothing to do with heartbreak. Even if the joy felt a little brittle at times, it was real. It counted. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about her when I met someone new. There was one woman, Emily, who caught me off guard. She worked at a local art supply shop I visited when I needed sketch pads. We'd chat about pens and colors, and eventually she asked if I wanted to see an exhibit at a small gallery nearby. I almost said no. My guard went up the way it always did when the past tried to whisper that nothing would work out again. But I said yes. The gallery was quiet, filled with soft jazz and vivid canvases. She walked beside me with calm confidence. I found myself watching her when she wasn't looking, trying to figure out if my heart was ready to let someone else inside. I didn't have an answer by the end of the night. But I smiled when she touched my arm gently and said, "You're easy to talk to." I hadn't felt that in a long time. We kept it light, coffee, conversations, no big promises. I told her, early on, that I'd been through something. She didn't pry. She just said, "We all have," and offered me space. That meant more to me than she probably realized. I wasn't looking to be rescued. I was just trying to figure out how to stand in this new skin I was still getting used to. The interesting thing about heartbreak is how it sharpens your memory. I remembered things now in brutal detail, not just about her leaving, but about the whole relationship. I saw red flags I'd ignored. I remembered how she used to pull away during conflict, how she avoided deep conversations when things got uncomfortable. I thought about the times I had apologized just to keep the peace. I thought I was being kind. Maybe I was just afraid. But I wasn't angry anymore. That was the biggest shift. The anger had burned out somewhere between month 5 and 10. Now, there was just acceptance, a quiet knowing that we weren't meant to last. Not because of some cosmic misalignment, but because love alone isn't always enough. You need honesty, vulnerability, courage. We had love, but maybe not the rest. That didn't make her a villain. And it didn't make me a victim. We were two people who couldn't make it work. And she had made a choice she thought was right at the time. Even if it shattered me. Even if she came back later with regret in her hands, hoping I'd still be there. I wasn't. I saw her once, by accident, months after the last message. I was walking through the farmer's market on a Saturday morning, carrying a paper bag of peaches. I turned a corner, and there she was, 10 feet away, by the flower stall. She didn't see me. Her hair was shorter. She looked tired. I paused, heart skipping, but didn't move toward her. I watched for a few seconds, just enough to feel the wave of emotion come and go. Then I turned and walked away. That was closure. Not a conversation. Not a second chance. Just a quiet moment where I realized I no longer needed anything from her. Not her presence, not her answers, not her love. That night, I sat on my couch and stared out the window. Summer air floated through the open glass. Somewhere in the building across from mine, someone was playing a guitar. It was off-key and charming in a way that made me smile. I grabbed my sketchpad and drew the window, the sky, the echo of music. And in the middle of that quiet, it hit me, I was proud of who I'd become. Not in some dramatic, movie-worthy way. Just in a simple, steady way. I had survived. I had rebuilt. I had learned to live with the cracks. And somehow, those cracks had made me softer, not harder. I thought about what I'd say if she messaged again. I didn't know if she would. Maybe she'd married someone else by now. Maybe she hadn't forgiven herself. But if that message ever came, I knew exactly what I'd say. Thank you for walking away. It forced me to become the version of myself I'd forgotten I could be. By the end of that summer, I wasn't thinking about her every day anymore. That used to feel impossible. I remember in the early weeks, her memory was like a background app one couldn't shut off. She lived in every quiet moment, every old song, every shadow of what I thought my life would be. But by now, she was only a guest in my thoughts, occasional, unexpected, and no longer unwelcome. I had started living again, not just surviving. My job, once a hollow distraction, began to matter again. I took on a new project that involved travel. It was small, but meaningful, a way to stretch myself in places I'd grown stagnant. I flew to Portland for a weekend client pitch, stayed in a modest hotel, and found myself enjoying the strange comfort of being alone in a city where no one knew me. I walked along the river, bought a coffee from a street vendor, and smiled when a dog barked at a pigeon like it had just discovered magic. There was something liberating about being a stranger again, no one asking what had happened, no familiar faces looking at me with pity or curiosity. Just me and the world. No backstory. No heartbreak trailing behind me like a second shadow. Emily and I continued to talk. It never grew intense or messy. We both knew the rules, two people getting to know each other slowly, kindly, without forcing things into shape. One night, over takeout on my couch, she asked me, "What do you miss about her?" It caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that directly. I thought about it for a moment, then answered honestly. Her voice in the morning. The way she'd mumble half words and pull the blanket tighter before opening her eyes. And the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching. Emily nodded. That's honest. I looked at her. Do you think I should miss her less? No, she said. I think if you miss someone, it means something real happened. Even if it ended badly. I didn't know it at the time, but that conversation would stay with me for weeks. Because it reminded me that loss doesn't mean failure. It doesn't erase the good parts. It just means that something once mattered enough to hurt when it was gone. That realization softened me. It allowed me to stop pretending I was completely fine and start accepting that healing is a process, not a performance. One evening, I visited my old neighborhood. It wasn't intentional. I was in the area after a work dinner and decided to walk off the noise in my head. The streets were familiar. Same cracks in the sidewalks, same rusted mailbox posts. I passed by our old apartment building and saw someone else's name on the buzzer now. Annie was long gone. I stood across the street for a while, half expecting a ghost to walk out the door. But no ghosts came. Just a young couple exiting with groceries, laughing about something I couldn't hear. Their laughter stung in a way I didn't anticipate, but I didn't resent it. They reminded me of us once. Before the silence, before the text, before everything changed. I turned and walked away. That night, I opened the journal I hadn't touched in months. Flipping through it felt like time travel. Each page was a snapshot of a different version of me, broken, confused, hopeful, angry. I reached the final blank pages and decided to write again, not to revisit the past but to acknowledge the present. I'm still here. I'm different now. Not healed entirely, but whole enough to know my worth. She was a chapter, not the book. And I'm not afraid to keep writing. Closing the journal felt like closing a door. Not slamming it shut, but gently pulling it behind me and walking forward. One morning in early September, I received a wedding invitation. It was from a former college friend, someone we used to double date with. I hadn't spoken to them in years, but they'd remembered me. The invitation came with a handwritten note. Hope you're doing okay. Would love to see you if you're up for it. For a few minutes, I debated saying no. Weddings had become a strange trigger for me, both too close and too distant. But something in me said, go. Not to chase the past, but to witness love again. To prove to myself that it was still real. So I went. It was a small ceremony in the countryside, simple and elegant. The couple exchanged vows beneath a canopy of trees. I watched them, not with envy, but with quiet admiration. Love hadn't betrayed them. It had found them. At the reception, I made small talk, laughed more than I expected, and didn't mention her once. Later, I stood by a bonfire with a glass of wine in hand and looked up at the stars. Someone asked me if I was seeing anyone. I paused, smiled, and said, not officially, but I'm open. And I meant it. The next day, on the drive home, I played an old playlist, the one I'd once hidden in a backup folder. I let the music play without skipping any songs. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just listened. The songs were beautiful. They always had been. And now they belonged to me again, not to her. Not to us. Me. This was my story now. Not hers. Not ours. Mine. And it was far from over. Fall returned like an old friend, cooler air, longer shadows, leaves swirling like forgotten memories on sidewalks. A year had passed since the day she left. It didn't feel like an anniversary, but something quieter. A reminder. A checkpoint. I woke up on that day with no heaviness in my chest. I didn't have to brace myself. I made coffee, opened the window, and watched the leaves drift down like slow-motion rain. No flashbacks, no text messages reread, no need to replay old scenes in my head. It was just a Thursday. That's when I knew I'd really moved on. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It's slow and unceremonious. It sneaks up on you. One day you're still walking through fog, and the next you realize the sun is shining and you're not afraid to feel it on your face. I took the day off work, not because I was sad, but because I wanted to honor what I had lived through. Sometimes survival deserves a pause, a breath, a moment to look back and say, I made it. So I spent the day alone, not lonely. I visited a museum, wandered through quiet galleries, and let my mind settle. I took myself out to dinner that night, ordered my favorite dish, and toasted a glass of red wine to no one in particular. Maybe to the boy I was a year ago. Maybe to the man I had become. When I got home, there was a letter in my mailbox. Handwritten. No return address. I knew the handwriting instantly. I stood in my hallway, key still in hand, heart oddly still. No panic. No rush. Just quiet curiosity. I opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. I don't expect this to change anything. I just needed to write it. Maybe for me, maybe for you. I'm sorry for how I left. For not explaining, for disappearing, for the text that was supposed to protect you from me but only hurt you more. The truth is, I didn't leave because you weren't enough. I left because I felt like I wasn't. I was terrified. Of commitment. Of failing you. Of not being the person you believed I was. So I ran. I've thought about you every day since. Not in a way that expects anything, but in a way that carries guilt. I wanted to say thank you for loving me even when I couldn't love myself. I know you've probably moved on. I hope you have. But I needed you to know that what we had was real. At least to me. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and set it on my desk. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the urge to write back. Instead, I stared at the envelope for a long time and whispered quietly, "I forgive you." It wasn't dramatic. Just a release. Not because I owed it to her, but because I owed it to myself. Carrying her mistake any longer would only keep me chained to a version of me that no longer existed. That night, I went out for a walk. The streets were cool and empty. A light wind brushed past my jacket, and the city hummed around me. I passed by a bakery closing up, a bookstore with warm lights inside, a couple holding hands like the world had nothing else to ask of them. And I felt something I hadn't in a long, long time. Peace. Not joy. Not excitement. Just stillness. Like the storm inside me had finally quieted. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know who I'd love next, or when, or how deeply. But I knew this, I was no longer defined by the day she left me. That was just one day in a life full of days. In the months that followed, things continued to shift. I saw Emily less often, we parted ways gently, mutually. No heartbreak this time. Just two people who shared a few chapters and then turned pages on their own. We still message now and then. She always signs off with, "Take care of you." And I do. I've dated a little. Nothing serious yet. But I'm not afraid anymore. I trust myself now. I trust that I'll see the signs, speak up when it matters, walk away when I need to. My cactus, Elliot, is somehow still alive. He sits on the windowsill, quietly defying the odds, much like me. One evening not long ago, I found myself helping a friend plan their wedding. Funny how life works. I gave advice on seating charts, venues, food options, all the things I once knew by heart. There was no bitterness, just pride that I could talk about love again without flinching. As I was leaving their apartment, my friend stopped me. "You seem good," he said. I smiled. I am. And I meant it. Because sometimes the people we lose are exactly the ones we were never meant to keep. Not because they didn't matter, but because their part in our story was to break us just enough to reveal the strength we didn't know we had. She left. And I lived. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Have a nice day.